Live in Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 Today.
Good morning and thank you for joining us here on NBC 16 Today. I'm Lily Taylor. First, we want to get to that tsunami watch and then tsunami advisory for the coast of Oregon after a massive 8.8 earthquake struck off the coast of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula yesterday. That's the sixth strongest earthquake ever recorded. And we're taking a live look right now along the coast in Lincoln City this morning. And NBC 16, Zach Bruhl is in Florence with us with the latest. Now, Zach, you're pretty close there to the docks. Any movement of boats you notice or in the water as that sun is rising there in Florence so far?
Now, sun is rising and showing a calm here in Florence. Not a whole lot going on. We were curious, LSB and I, talking about with these boats behind me, if there would have been any damage done to those. You know, those are on the water, much more susceptible to the slight shifts in tide that we saw here along the Oregon coast. And things look fine. I'm kind of gandering across it. You know, there's a couple dozen boats here on the water. Not noticing any noticeable damage. Like those little bumpers that they lie along their boats were more than enough to withstand the impact of these waves that came to the Oregon coast. Now, the thing is, Lily, that the risk still remains. Now, we're not talking about a big wipeout of Florence or the Oregon coast, but we are talking about some concerns if you're heading to the beach this weekend for a few reasons. One, for the next 12 or so hours, there's an opportunity for waves to continue to roll in. They expect waves to continue to have opportunities to roll in for 15 hours after the initial hit. That initial hit was about 11:30 last night. So we're talking 2:30, 3 o'clock this afternoon before we're truly in the clear from that sort of risk. Now, there are some that persist beyond that. For example, I have some friends heading to the coast on Friday afternoon to go surfing. And I called them and let them know to keep an eye out for debris. The debris shifts along the ocean floor could have some impacts, especially if you're in some shallow waters, even in places that you're familiar with. So if you have any plans to head to the coast today or really throughout the summer, it's a good idea to check in with the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, the National Tsunami Warning Center, about the potential risks that could still exist and persist beyond just today. So plenty of reasons for caution, albeit it does seem as if Oregon and much of the United States, including the high-risk areas like Hawaii, did dodge a bullet here.
Thank you, Zach. Good tips there. And another community we want to make sure we're checking in on is Coos Bay. NBC 16's Dan Kelly is staying in communication with their emergency officials there. The emergency manager telling him that it's best to stay away from low-lying areas. The U.S. Coast Guard has also been preparing and making sure they are ready in case any action needs to be taken. The last time a damaging tsunami hit Oregon was back in 2011 after an earthquake struck near Japan. According to the Oregon Department of Emergency Management, that tsunami caused severe damage in Oregon and contributed to the deaths of 4 people on the coast. Another area of high concern is Hawaii. The tsunami warning for those there now downgrading to an advisory. The Pacific Tsunami Warning saying that a major tsunami is not expected to strike the state of Hawaii. However, the agency warns that strong currents may still occur along all coasts that could be a hazard. Water has begun gradually receding in some parts of Hawaii, including Hanalei Bay and Haliwa Boat Harbor on Oahu's north shore. Some residents now cleared to go to their homes. Evacuation orders for coastal inundation zones have also been canceled. Officials say residents returning should be on the lookout for damage. And that's kind of what Zach in Florence was describing, that yes, this is our story for today, but if you're going to the beach, you know, anytime this week, we might still see some lasting impacts.
Yes, and some of those lasting impacts may be looking a little bit differently depending on where you are. Of course, in Florence, we're going to see a little bit more so of those waves working their way on in, a little bit more debris. And then if you work your way a little bit south, where we see the Coquille River or even the Umpqua River working its way into some of these bigger oceans, so to speak, you definitely want to make sure that you know that some of those smaller creeks and streams maybe it's seeing a little bit more so of that increased water flow, but also want to break down what the different watch, advisory, warnings mean across the board. I mean, we've been really talking about going from a watch to an advisory. At some point, Hawaii has been in a warning, and it really is equivalent to thinking about a level 1, level 2, and level 3 evacuation. Watch just means keeping an eye on the conditions. Hey, this is what we're monitoring. An advisory is, hey, you may want to have that plan in place. I'm talking evacuation plan sometimes, and just keep that in mind over the next couple of days. And yeah, a warning, meaning the threat has increased. We talk about Hawaii really decreasing from a warning to an advisory, and we're still seeing that evident across the board. But as we work our way a little bit more so into the entire U.S. coastline, I'm talking the West Coast, seeing both warnings and advisories being issued. Some portions of Northern California still under a watch, which has been really decreasing throughout the last couple of hours since the start really of that initial tsunami warning and advisory being issued for some of these areas. Back here at home, though, like we mentioned, we are still tracking out that advisory, which could shift at any moment. Despite seeing it really expiring through the afternoon, we could see it continue through the next couple of days. So keeping in mind with that tsunami advisory in place, you want to know where those higher ground levels are. Are you in an evacuation zone or in a tsunami zone? If not, you definitely want to make sure that you've got an evacuation plan in place. And of course, as always, continuing to let you guys know that Hawaii has now downgraded to an advisory from that warning, but of course, continuing to see if we manage to downgrade into a watch as we head into the next couple of hours. Back here at home, we're tracking out the chance for a little bit more instability and seeing a push for those isolated thunderstorms. We'll exactly break down when we can expect those coming up in that full forecast.
Now to an NBC 16 update. Traffic is flowing again on I-5 after a multi-vehicle car crash shut down a portion of the major highway for hours yesterday morning. The backup continued well into the afternoon. So far, we know a total of 6 vehicles were involved. There were 2 wrecks, both related. The first involved 2 passenger vehicles colliding into a northbound dump truck, resulting in the second accident. That was on the southbound side of I-5. OSP confirming that 1 person has died as a result of the wreck, with 1 person now in the hospital. People expecting FEMA relief money following the devastating floods in March can toss the applications. The federal government has denied Governor Tina Kotek's major disaster declaration request for individual assistance for residents in Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties. Instead, the federal government will be providing funds to public entities like city and county governments, tribal governments, and some nonprofits. FEMA has also denied a request by the governor to make the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program available, not just in those counties, but statewide. And Congresswoman Val Hoyle says cuts to federal SNAP programs could have devastating consequences here in Lane County. At a press conference on Tuesday, Congresswoman Hoyle joined Food for Lane County and Hunger Free Oregon to warn that thousands of residents are at risk of losing access to food assistance. They say these cuts pass as part of President Trump's big, beautiful bill, tighten work requirements, and eliminate key exemptions for vulnerable groups like veterans, homeless people, older adults, and foster youth. Food for Lane County says demand at local food pantries has more than doubled since 2022. But with fewer donations and the cancellation of key USDA food programs, their shelves are now going bare. Hoyle also noted that SNAP benefits only provide just over $6 a day, or an average $187 a month.
This should not be a partisan issue. Feeding hungry people for $6 a day should be something that we agree on. And the fact of the matter is, we aren't seeing a whole lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in this program.
It's so important for the community to know that planned cuts to SNAP will have a huge impact on a system that's already very strained. Food for Lane County is doing its best to meet the need around our community and to provide food to everyone who needs it. But the reality is we don't have enough food in our system to meet every single person who needs it.
Hoyle says if Congress doesn't reverse course, families will suffer, and so will the local economy. SNAP dollars support grocery stores, truck drivers, and farmers across Oregon. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield has now filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, challenging its demand for personal data on SNAP recipients, calling it an unconstitutional invasion of privacy.